Episode, nobody beats the house.
Alright, I think I've got everything set up here. If anybody's out there, give us a sound check, and then we'll get started over here. Oh, wait a minute, I think I got it over here. Alright, so I've labeled this one both stabilizing braces and firearms redefinition to do a little bit of comparison, and then perhaps dig into a little of both here this morning. So let's see, we're digging into the consecutive, or the, I guess it's was it consecutive or simultaneous ATF comment periods that we are experiencing right now. We have the first one was the redefinition of firearms, which started on May 20th and will last for another 64 days. We also have the stabilizing brace reevaluation and factoring criteria, which started on June 9th and has about 84 days. So it looks like they're about 20 days off from each other. Interesting. So I thought we'd take a look and compare the redefinition of firearm. Has 56,000 comments submitted, and of those, 46,000 are approved. And it's been up now for almost 20 days, or 20 days. The brace has been up for just a few days and has 59,000 comments, with only 1,600 approved. So there's no consistency here. We have many more comments coming in for the braces, very few going in for the identification of firearms. I don't think there's a way to determine which would be more important or which would be more devastating or detrimental, but it's our obligation or responsibility, I guess, to deal with both of them. All right, so with that, we'll dig in. The unfortunate part, when you look at it this way, with the redefinition of firearms, when we dig into these comments, because they have accepted so many comments, there is an abundance, a majority of boilerplate comments. So what I'm going to attempt to do is, without wasting everybody's time here, open up everything on the first page of the comments for the redefinition of a firearm. These are sorted by most recent, and they look to be about comment number 45,000, almost 46,000. And I do these live like this just so that there's no concern that I'm either setting them up or prepping or something, and I'm lazy and I'm not going to do this twice, so I don't feel like it's worth recording all this and then having a giant file on my computer and then uploading it. And instead I do it live because it's authentic and it's happening live, but it's also, oh, that's interesting. So when I tried to jump to the third page of regulations, I got them here. That's interesting. I figured doing this live is real, and then also I don't need to do what I just said, create a giant file, have it on my computer, and then deal with it. All right, so I'm going to do consecutive ones off the third page as well. More than likely that was just a weird glitch. Not enough to be concerned about. It was a normal glitch for when site might be getting a lot of traffic or attention. So I'm opening up a lot. This should be about, well, it should be 50 comments from the redefinition of a firearm. However, when I start to go through them, I suspect if it's like before, what we're going to find is, what does this say, comment on FR? I suspect what we're going to find is that most of them are boilerplate, most of them are form letters, and we'll be able to identify them pretty quickly and just close them. So as fast as I'm opening them, just by right-clicking and saying open in a new tab, I suspect we're going to be able to stretch this out and begin to close them just as fast. I guess nobody's out there today. Let me flip over and see if the audio is working. Just as fast. I guess nobody's out there today. Okay, the audio is working. All right, so now we'll go through and check these things. So, well, here's a real comment. That's a real comment. That's a boilerplate. Some of these are real. This looks like, this one's definitely boilerplate, and you can tell from this paragraph. Here's what the ATF said in January 2021. It's a really good piece to use as boilerplate. It's a really good one to copy and paste, but it is copied and pasted. This first sentence, however, is additional. They added it. Guns are a hobby. Please not take away the rights for millions of people. Thank you. And then they copied and pasted, so we're going to delete that one. I think this one might be real. We'll read that one. That one's real. This one is, again, that exact same. No, it's a different boilerplate. All right, I'm going to read that one because it might be different. Oh, snap. This one is boilerplate with a paragraph in front. We'll read that paragraph. This one is not boilerplate. This one is boilerplate. I guess I can count down from 50. So at this point, there's only been a couple of boilerplates. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Saying I still haven't written yet, but we're getting ideas here while I work. Yeah, and it's, it's not like, even if everybody wrote, then what would we have? Some government that has to buy bigger servers? Like, it's not like this is going to change nothing, but this certainly gives us something to rally behind. So it's not, I don't want to say it's not unimportant, but it isn't super important either. Get people to do this, then that's great. But if you've got other things to do, then that's not going to change the outcome. As a military veteran, it saddens, we got a bunch of these. So these are, people are adding a paragraph to the front. I'm not going to even complain about that, really. Yeah, I'm not even going to complain. The only thing I'm going to complain about is I opened too many. So good, I'm an idiot. So I opened way too many. It turns out that by doing this, figured out that, at least this time around, the receiver one has a bunch of good ones. Oh yeah, this is great. So they're not real long either. I like that. That's good because I don't know how much time I got today. Wow, that's a long one, and it's had to prove me wrong by having, what the hell, I think I've closed 6 of these out of 50. So, dang it. Dang free independent people proving me wrong all the time. Trying to do a YouTube video acting like I know everything. And then everybody goes ahead and just, writes in unique comments in here. I think this one might be boilerplate, but it might not be. I like how short they are, too. Oh, man. Yep, this is all of them. So, you know what? I think most of these are not boilerplate. So I wonder now if the boilerplate thing kind of got around, probably because of these videos. And the FPC and the GOA were like, that used to work for the FUDs, but this new breed of Second Amendment advocate, they don't need the boilerplates. I don't know if that's boilerplate or not. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'll be gall darned. These are almost all unique. And they don't take very long either. This won't take very long. So we'll see how much I think I might be able to read 50 of them here in a minute. This is going to be like that Micro Machines guy. I'll read all 50 of them in 1 minute. I'm not going to do commentary because there's nobody here today. I'll just read them. So this is for the redefinition of a firearm, and this is comment number 3,847. This regulation does nothing but infringe on the rights of law-abiding Americans with constant harassment through numerous background checks and non-firearm parts and for non-firearm parts and endlessly putting roadblocks up for free commerce on parts not under the authority of ATF to regulate, as they are not a firearm. Stop harassing citizens for exercising their rights. As a military veteran who fought for these rights and a federal state law enforcement officer for the past 25 years, I find this proposed rule insulting, unconstitutional, harassing, and useless. Next up is 3924. Oh, you don't like guns? Name 3 people in your security detail without one. Comment number 3905. This rule change is bad for both gun owners and the American economy. Many businesses will be directly affected by this, and as well as millions more individuals. I view this as a direct attack on the 2A and citizens who legally follow the laws. I respectfully wish to make my voice heard. Do not make a rule change that would have negative impacts on the American people. Next one is 3933. This is interesting how these are coming up with 3933 when we know they're at 46,005. So what's up with that? Let's try to go back to the beginning here. This happened to me one other time when they didn't filter. What am I supposed to do though? These aren't just a whole bunch of unique ones. So this one is 45,877. So I guess it must have been when I flipped the page. I'll quit trying to figure out the ATF's database. I feel like I can figure it out. ATF 2021 R-05. The ATF cannot legally change the definition of a receiver. Only Congress can do that. You are overstepping your authority. Oh, I wonder if I should close these. I'm going to just go ahead and close them. The next one is 45,863. So 45,863 comments went in before this one, just on the ATF's proposal to change the definition of a firearm in 2021. The only thing that should be proposed by the BTAFE is deregulation of existing firearms regulations. All are an infringement on the constitutional rights of the U.S. populace and as such should not be in place. Statistically, there is no effect on gun ownership and crime rates. As such, all regulations serve no purpose but to criminalize innocent Americans. I like it because not only does it tell them they're idiots, but it also lets them know in a way that lets them know that there are employees that they're idiots and they're doing their job wrong. Without actually saying those words. So next up is 45,760. I guess I'm not supposed to be commenting. Hey ATF, don't you have more innocent women and children to kill? Keeps your filthy hands off my guns. So I guess you can get the point across with sarcasm or whatever. All right, so next up is number 45775. I am writing in support of the ATF's proposed rule that would stop the proliferation. I am writing in support of the ATF's proposed rule that would stop the proliferation of deadly and untraceable ghost guns. Ghost guns are quickly becoming the weapon of choice for violent crimes, as they allow anyone to make an untraceable weapon in less than an hour. This proposed rule would restrict criminals or extremists who want to buy untraceable guns without a background check, increasing public safety and saving countless lives. So you can get upset or you can understand their position better than they do so that you can attempt to communicate with some. I'm not trying to communicate with all of them. Some people aren't able, but people that are being misled or are misunderstanding. I like something I saw the other day that I can throw away a relationship with somebody because of one issue they have with them. So if that counts for people that you know that have these crazy ideas, then consider education over just writing them off. But it's up to you. So next up is 45806. The ATF is not, by law or constitution, a regulatory body, and this latest attempt at infringement will likely be ignored by a large majority of people until you force them to ignore it, until you force them to not ignore it and respond to your unlawful and unconstitutional attempts to enforce that repugnant law. Force them to respond with force of their own. I want to be absolutely clear. I have no designs on violence. I don't like violence. I'm as close to pacifist as is possible to be without actually fully being a pacifist. I am not threatening to do anything in response to anything. What I am saying, though, is that many other people will actually respond to this with violence. This will result in both ATF agents and good, law-abiding American citizens losing their lives in pointless bloodshed because you made millions of Americans into felons overnight. Please do not do this. Instead, learn to recognize the NFA for what it is, an unconstitutional edict from an organization that should have never been created in the first place. Repeal the NFA, disband the ATF instead. Do not become the modern-day Thomas Gage. If you do, the resulting tear in the fabric of our union will be irreparable. Well, it certainly lays it out for them. Next up is 45869. Oh, snap. I don't know which one you said that to. I'm guessing you didn't mean it to this one. Well, one thing about this one, one of the only pros, I guess, or one of the only people that are confused about what ghost guns are, especially the part about untraceable weapons in less than an hour. They don't understand the concept or what we're talking about, at least who can make them in less than an hour, right? But this is boilerplate. I know I've read this before. So unless I happen, and there's no way I read this comment because it's comment number 45,000. So last time I read comments from the redefinition, it was definitely in the 3,000s or 10,000s or something. It was not at 45,000 yet. So this is a new comment and it is a repeat. This is effectively a boilerplate from the other side. And that tells us that they're over there underhanding. Is that how you say it? I don't know sports. But they're throwing softballs. They're throwing slow balls or whatever the hell fucking thing you're supposed to throw when it's wimpy. All right, next up is I'm just going to read the paragraph or the sentence that's attached to the boilerplate. Comment 45761. The Second Amendment is clear and easy to comprehend. And then they put in boilerplate that I'll read it, I guess, once since I haven't read it in this particular episode yet. REATF 2021 R-05. It has not escaped anyone's attention that the political attack on gun kits was written and organized by leftist lobbying groups with the ATF as an unwitting tool. Nevertheless, even you must have realized the following. Non-serialized guns are the purview of law-abiding hobbyists and are almost irrelevant to crime of any sort. For 5 years, the ATF scoured police reports, but was only able to find less than 1% of the reports involved even suspected privately made firearms, and only if you conclude potential crime scenes as opposed to actual ones. This, despite the fact that a single crime scene might involve hundreds of factory-made firearms. For decades, the ATF encouraged hobbyists to fabricate firearms in their homes, with definitions with which multiple federal courts have excluded their work from both statutory and regulatory definitions of firearms and receivers. As with bump stocks, a politicized ATF has now turned on Americans who relied on its definitions, encouraging people who relied on regulatory action to spend hundreds of dollars only to render that property worthless for political motives, is involved in regulatory taking under Fifth Amendment. At a minimum, the ATF is constitutionally obligated to compensate people who lost money based on the agency's misrepresentations. Having said that, I encourage the ATF to withdraw these regulations. Pretty sure that most of that is boilerplate. This one is comment number 45821. I oppose this. That could be a shirt. All right, this one is definitely boilerplate, so I'm just going to read the first part. This is comment number 45772. The history of firearms in our nation is a story of craftsmanship and ingenuity that span from before our founding in 1776. Individuals either crafted their own or relied on a gunsmith to design and create each article. This proud history made it possible to gain independence and keep it safe for over 2 centuries. And then there's boilerplate behind that. Next up is comment 45777. I am writing to support, there's that same one. I am writing in support of the ATF's proposed rule that would stop the proliferation of deadly and untraceable ghost guns. Ghost guns are quickly becoming the weapon of choice for violent crimes as they allow anyone to make an untraceable weapon in less than an hour. This proposed rule would restrict criminals or extremists who want to buy untraceable guns without a background check, increasing public safety and likely saving countless lives. So there's another boilerplate from the moms, probably. We don't know. I am writing in support of the ATF's proposed rule. Oh, well, now that they're putting in the boilerplates, now we're seeing there's 2 different kind of boilerplates happening. So that's 3 now from the other side. Are you upset? Are you mad that moms have a, shouldn't keep calling them moms because that's disrespecting people who are actually mothers. So the anti-rights bigots who are exploiting this situation for their own profit have a boilerplate, obviously, so Bloomberg paid for that. Lady from Monsanto either wrote it up herself on her own little typewriter or she paid somebody for it. But if we don't have boilerplate is like, I think it's from lawyers. It's when you have like a contract or some sort of a legal thing, like a will, and you get like 95% of it is the same for everybody. I think that's what it is. So that's like the boilerplate. And then you go in there and you change out the specifics of the whatever it is, like the will or the trust document. Let's go figure out where it came from. I mean, it could be the name from a boiler because a boiler is a thing that boils water, and they have a door on the front. Where would you get that from? Like origin? Yeah, origin. Meaning of boilerplate. Journalism, syndicated or ready to print copy, especially when our bi-weekly newspapers. Hackneyed writing. So, in other words, if it was like carbon copied, I guess, is hackneyed, made commonplace or trite, stale, banal, like 9mm. The detailed standard wording of a contract, informal phrases or text used repeatedly, as in correspondence produced by a word processing system. So it's that kind of stuff. But where it comes from, it doesn't tell you, even though I said, where does it come from? Where did it come from? They tell us. Vessel for boiling and heating. The plate was originally used to refer to the plates made for boilers. Fact that boilerplate text was stamped into the metal to be used in the printing press. And the fact that the first boilerplate text was stamped into the metal to be used in the printing press. The first boilerplates were publicly... Oh, so maybe you would... No, it doesn't make sense. Okay, well, that's a good question. I thought I knew where it came from. I know the gist of it, but I don't know the origins of it. But as far as ghost guns, well, Ghostbusters, you call Ghostbusters. this regulation does nothing. Wait a minute, what did I do? Go to the end? I think I went to the end. This regulation does nothing, but I already did. I read that one. So next up, well, we read a bunch of these actually. I forgot what I did. Did I start at the front here and then went backwards? I don't remember if I read this one. 3850. The Constitution does not grant the executive branch, let alone an unelected branch of administrators, to define words in law. That is legislating. That power is specifically delegated by we the people to Congress. That's pretty good. I might be missing one or two here, but I got a text and there's somebody doing something that I got to worry about with the text there, so I'm distracted. I apologize. Thank you for your patience. Next up is comment 3802. Oh, that's what happened. I was looking at the comment numbers and I was thinking, why are these at 3802? And then I went to the other side of the ones that I opened and they were at the much higher 46,000 or something. So I'm just going to keep going from right to left. And if I don't forget what I'm doing, we'll eventually run into the much higher comment numbers. And then we'll know that a lot of these, for anybody who's showing up late, we've been talking about mostly today the redefinition of receivers, redefinition of firearms comments. I opened up the most recent and I think I found 7 boilerplates if you count the 3 boilerplates that were for the antis. So there's been 3 boilerplates for anti-rights people, hate your rights and guns. And then there's been, I don't know, maybe 7 boilerplates for the pro-rights and pro-individual freedom side. And most of our boilerplates had a sentence or 2 in front of the boilerplate, so they were a little bit unique. So what I'm doing now is I'm reading from about the 50th towards the 1st. So I'm going backwards on the 50 tabs that I opened here to just kind of briefly thumb through them. Most of these comments are very short for what it's worth. All right, so next up is 3802. This proposed definition changes nothing more. Did I just read this one? Nothing more than a way to turn millions of law-abiding citizens into felons overnight. Looking at the definition of readily, one could interpret a hardware store as selling multiple readily converted parts that with very low cost and skill could be fashioned into a functional firearm or a firearms parts kit. The extensive list of requirements incurs significant costs, which is an obvious ploy to specifically target lower income citizens that are a statistically greater risk of being affected by gun violence. And then it links to some kind of medical thing with a bunch of letters in it, which makes it probably pretty official. The frankly rogue behavior of the ATF of attempting to control and disarm the populace by creating regulations instead of the proper path of going through the legislature, we all watched Schoolhouse Rock, am I right, is abhorrent and needs to be stopped. I sincerely hope that the ATF considers public comment on this topic. I'm not commenting. I'm not putting additional commentary onto these comments today, but if I was, I would commentary on that one. Next up is 3856. This feels like another attempt to make the law-abiding citizen an overnight felon once again. The definition of a receiver would be too vague, and enforcing vague laws would be a disaster. This would be a direct attack against the Second Amendment and would further damage the relationship between the people and the state. America is a truly great and special nation. Let's keep it free together. I fully oppose this measure. That's pretty decent. So next up is 3812. The ATF proposed rule 2021 R-05 is extremely vague in its definitions of a frame or a receiver and would make law-abiding citizens felons due to its vague terminology, making it impossible for a citizen to clearly know what a receiver is. The proposed definition of readily is so vague there would be no way to be able to positively identify what parts for a firearm would be legal to purchase and which would not be. For years, American citizens have been able to build a firearm of their choice legally. The requirements of a personally made firearm unduly restricts the rights of the American citizens to be able to practice their Second Amendment rights and would make law-abiding citizens felons. This guidance is at its best irresponsible and unfair, and at its worst, a backdoor gun registration that would make gun owners felons without them knowing why or how. Next up is comment 3837. Criminals aren't going to take the time required to build a gun. Despite what Jackwad Biden says, it cannot be built from 80% to fully working in under 30 minutes. This rule will do nothing to curb gun violence and only further punishes law-abiding citizens. It's time to stop being stupid about guns and to enforce the law that are already there. Again, new gun restrictions on law-abiding citizens will do nothing to stop criminals who have already demonstrated they do not care about the laws. Stop being such idiots. Well, I don't think they want you to say jackwad, but they approved the comment. So they said they don't want you to use swears. They must not call jackwad a swear. It must just be, they're like, oh, okay, we know who you're talking about. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to put everybody on hold, and we'll see what happens here. So I appreciate your patience, but I have to put everybody on hold here. All right. Appreciate your patience again with that. We'll get back to it. All right, so this is comment 3831. Dear ATF. I should clean my glasses. Oh, you know what else I didn't do is open this up for you people so you can read it easier. That's a lot easier. Oh my goodness. Look at that. That's much easier for you to read it. All right, dear ATF, this is bull. You decide to change the definition and turn legal, hardworking citizens into criminals? Don't act like that's not what's going to happen, especially the way the bill is worded. It's so ambiguous as to definition, time frame given, and actual persons affected as to be completely criminal if passed. Please do not, I say not, enact this rule. Thank you. All right, this next one is comment 3807. Criminals don't consult the law before committing a crime. Stop restricting law-abiding citizens. The next one is 3832. Homemade guns are legal. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It's not the job of the BTAFE to decide what arms to bear. Maybe what arms we bear, but yeah, right on. Next up is 3809. You got happy to do it. You're welcome. The next one is the new proposal to redefine what constitutes a firearm frame or receiver is with all intents and purposes an extremely vague and roundabout approach to strike another blow to law-abiding gun owners. It is impossible to know what would be considered a legal firearm frame receiver versus an illegal firearm frame receiver. Also, the proposed definition of the word readily is another example of the unclear nature of what these definitions seek to do. These new proposals make the law unclear so civilians do not know what is legal and illegal. This directly targets and impacts me because of my extensive collection of firearms and my hobbies of building and assembling builder's kits and AR kits. I do not support the redefining of the terms frame, receiver, or readily available, and I do not support the overbearing reach of the ATF trying to incriminate law-abiding citizens by changing the wording of definitions. That's cool. I don't think I've seen one yet where they mention that they collect and build, because we're allowed to do that. Like, what the hell? They're marginalizing person who wants to be handy or tinker, I don't know what the words are for that, that wants to be in, just wants to fiddle with the machine or with the project. Number 3929. This should not be passed. The wording of this document is contradictory and creates a new logical quagmire that would cost years of court time and billions in taxpayer dollars. The wording of this is clear that the ATF is trying to modify laws and its own rules in order to aid the poor prosecution and inept legal actions that the ATF, see in court failures. Rather than looking at the legalities it brings before the court, it is asking to change the law to suit the ATF's own political gain via the court system. This document is a clear cover for the agency failures, thus releasing the ATF of any accountability in public, legal, and government damages they might and would further cause. In every way, this creates a loophole for the ATF to leverage against whomever they see fit for whatever motivation, with impunity and no oversight. This document clarifies nothing and should not be passed. I kind of want to read that one again. That's interesting. I don't think I've seen that. I'm going to blame you for making a comment, and that distracted me. Dear ATF, it seems like a lot of work. Why not have a beer and smoke a spliff? Yeah, I don't think they like that. They like tobacco and alcohol. If you write it with 9mm in mind, they can't ignore it, and it's an automatic win for us. Interesting. I thought you were going to say, like, if you write it with, the lead. Oh, if you hand wrote your letter with the lead of a 9mm, would that be good luck or would that be bad luck? I don't know. I'm going to reread this one because I read it poorly, and I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. And, oh, that's too big. And I don't think I've seen this particular angle before, and I think I like the angle. So this is comment 3929 again. This should not be passed. The wording of this document is contradictory and creates a new legal quagmire that would cost years of court time and billions of taxpayer dollars. The wording of this is clear that the ATF is trying to modify laws and its own rules in order to aid the poor prosecution and inept legal actions that the ATF, see in court failures. Rather than looking at the legalities it brings before the court, it is asking to change the law to suit the ATF's own political gain via the court system. This document is a clear cover for the agency's failures. thus releasing the ATF of any accountability in public, legal, and government damages they have, might, and would further cause. In every way, this creates a loophole for the ATF to leverage against whomever they see fit for whatever motivation with impunity and no oversight. This document clarifies nothing and should not be passed. I don't think I've seen that one or read that one yet, so I like that one. If you're out there and you want to comment on it, feel free. The next one is 3915. I believe that ATF 2021 R-05 Federal Register Number 2021-10058 will create an undue cost burden to the average American citizen and restrain the manufacturing of firearms both privately and commercially. The rule change is not feasible, nor is it practical. I oppose ATF 2021 R-05. I am an American citizen that has been creating firearms for my own use for over 5 years. I feel this is a burden that will restrain me from exercising my constitutional rights and will not stop nor reduce crime in any way. I thought that was boilerplate, except for the part where it says about, where it says for 5 years. Interesting. All right, next up is comment 3931. There should be no extra 80% lowers regulations. This regulation is against the Bill of Rights. This regulation should not pass through. There has already been a case about bump stocks that says the ATF cannot create law. Do not enact this regulation. That's interesting, holding them to task with the evidence that the bump stock ruling indicates or would allude to or whatever. So next up is comment number 3870. Do not make any changes and stop unlawfully trying to infringe on our 2A rights. It's hard to complain about that one. Next up is 3911. So 3911. These regulations are arbitrary and completely vague. First of all, you are an enforcement agency, not a regulatory department or a legislative body. You know as well as we do that by changing the definition, you are in fact regulating the entire swath of products that are already in circulation in the millions and have by far exceeded any possible definition of common use. Furthermore, enforcement of this would be impossible without further infringements on rights which are not supposed to be infringed upon at all. And finally, as usual, you know that the professed target demographic for this law will completely ignore it, and you won't be able to enforce it anyway. This just comes across as an excuse to further steal liberties that are protected under the Constitution and pander to the vocal minority. P.S. Myself and others will choose to comment anonymously due to BATF's documented history of unconstitutional enforcement. Interesting. The thing is, it is a enforcement agency, but it's also a regulatory agency. They are a regulatory agency that in 1934 was tasked by Congress to carry guns and become an enforcement agency as well. So it is. Because in other words, they maintain the permits, right? They regulate the permits and whatnot, and then they also go out and arrest you if you mess with the permits wrong. All right, so next up is 3928. Strongly opposed to this and any infringement on the right to keep and bear arms. I mean, it's good. It's a little vague, but I mean, it definitely gets the point across. I don't know how they interpret that. I guess if it's in here, it's in here, and it counts as a positive, but they don't tell us what criteria or whatever. Let's see. The BATF, this one is 3914. The BATF is constantly trying to regulate the rights of law-abiding citizens. Criminals do not follow the laws, therefore these new proposals will not regulate crime. They will only restrict and regulate those that abide by the law. In this document, it is stated, the court's interpretation of ATF regulations, if broadly followed, could mean that as many as 90% of all firearms now in the United States would not have any frame or receiver subject to regulation. This is proof that the BATF just wants to regulate firearm ownership of the United States citizens. The Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America clearly states that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Any and all regulations are an infringement. I hope you will stop acting outside the direction of the Constitution that you swore to protect and preserve. I'll just try to hit a couple here. It gets weird whenever I get to the end of the range, as it bumps tabs weird. So now it's at 3858. This does nothing to help protect citizens of the USA. It's terrible that the ATF thinks they have the right to make these decisions. This needs to stop. It makes it clear, the person's position. 3893. This one's a long one. I am against this proposed rule and cite specific sections that will place some of the most unreasonable burdens on lawful gun owners and manufacturers. This is not to say I am for any sections of this proposed rule, as I am not. The proposed changes in Section 2A, definition of a firearm, mean that any block of metal can be classified as a firearm if someone demonstrates that it can be modified to be a part of any assembly that can expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. Just as an example, that section, if adopted, will allow the government to classify what someone considers a paperweight to be the subject of the provisions of the Gun Control Act. I am against adoption of Section H, marking requirements for firearms, Section 1, record keeping. The proposal places undue burden on lawful manufacturers and gun owners to mark, handle, maintain, and keep records for multiple parts of what currently comprises a single firearm. It will also place increased burden on gun owners to report and record the transfer and or disposal of the parts of a firearm. In addition, the section places unreasonable burden on lawful gun owners to mark privately made firearms. Additionally, in many parts of the country, there is an extremely limited access to services that can properly mark firearms. This is especially true in the areas where the lack of FFLs place people in the position of having to privately make their own firearms. I don't think I've seen that one yet. Sorry to interrupt in the middle of the comment. In summary, these rule changes will do little to combat criminal behavior associated with the illegal manufacture, ownership, use, and transfer of firearms outlined in the background section. The proposed rule will only result in increased burden and cost for lawful gun manufacturers and owners, and will further infringe on the rights of Americans that are protected under the Second Amendment. Finally, such drastic rule changes to the GCA, Gun Control Act, should be established through the legislative process and not by the executive branch of our government. So I don't think anybody's mentioned the fact that with the reclassification of firearms and this concept of remarking or having to mark firearm pieces or parts or whatever they want to call a new part of a gun. Yeah, there's parts of the country that don't have firearms, and that's why they're that's one of the reasons 80% are attractive or are an option for some people. Interesting, I like that. All right, next up is 3881. I believe that this is an unconstitutional overreach because the Biden administration can't get what they want through Congress. Okay. Next up is 3877. This is unacceptable and a waste of taxpayer dollars. We need to say that a lot more often. This is the reason people are calling for the abolition of the ATF. I didn't read that right. This is the reason people are calling for the abolition of the ATF. I haven't heard that one yet either, but I like it. We say other words, but not abolition. You do not have the authority to make or define law, especially if it violates the Constitution. This attempt to bypass the limits on the government set forth by the Constitution in an attempt to criminalize law-abiding citizens. It's a disgrace. This is a disgrace to our country. Signed, American citizen. They could have also said, you are a disgrace to our country, but they chose to say this is. So that was nicer of them than I would have. All right, next up is 3901. Personally changing and redefining firearms receivers and frames will not make a difference. I used to sell weapons for a pawn shop, and ATF y'all's site is already slow. Do you really think y'all could handle the extra paperwork and files you were talking about holding, to put it bluntly? You can't. And to put it bluntly, you can't. And if you think now changing the law will help, it won't. All you're going to do is confuse people. The more you try to take away weapons, guess what? It doesn't only hurt the people, it hurts the ATF as well. What will you do when all guns are taken from the people? Lay off a good portion of Americans who work for you? Don't you think we have enough Americans without jobs? There are some stupid laws out there, I will agree, but trying to mess with receivers isn't going to do anything. Trying to get a company to fill out ATF forms for parts is stupid. Most parts don't even have serial numbers, so how would that even work? It can't, because in order for the ATF to be filled in, it must have a serial. Personal to tell the truth from someone who doesn't sit behind a desk. The people of America are law-abiding and should not have to be punished for other mistakes. You're going about this the wrong way. You know, there's no punctuation in this at all, but that's one of the better ones today so far. Next. 4 or 5, okay, now there's the jump. So this is the first, that was the kind of 25 random one, or no, that was the 25 sequential ones from page like 3, I think. This is, jumps up to comment 45,801. So these are the ones now from the first page that I opened up this morning about an hour ago. This violates my Second Amendment right. The government has no place holding my rights at ransom by requiring tax stamps and manufacturing permits. Next up is 45,808. All right, get yourself a cup of coffee. I'm getting something to drink before this one is so long. At least it's not boilerplate, I'm pretty sure. All right, here we go. With its definitions of partially complete receiver and readily, ATF 2021 R-05 would codify arbitrarily and capricious classification standards. The vague definition of partially complete receiver contains still more vague definitions like clearly identifiable, unfinished component part of a weapon, critical stage of manufacture, sufficiently complete to function, and primordial state. I didn't remember that being in there. The new definition of readily contains so many factors and of such ambiguous weight and meaning that the test can only be meant to confuse and intimidate non-FFL entities before ATF's awesome authority. The multi-factor test for readily amounts to lawless Caesarism? I don't know what that word is, and invests the ATF director with more power than Congress has authorized. ATF would like to legitimize its whole arbitrary sample submission process, one which is not derived from the Gun Control Act and which ATF emphasizes does not even obligate them to respond. This is a farcical and irregular process that lacks any pretense of Fifth Amendment protection and by literal definition gives the director unlimited discretion. Did ATF examine relevant data? No. ATF admits this in its rules Regulatory Impact Analysis Chapter 3, that it did not attempt to collect the relevant data on partially complete receiver and kit sales. ATF has no idea how much commerce will be affected and instead tauntingly asked reps from Ghost Gunner by name to share their own analysis. Did ATF rely on factors Congress did not intend the agency to consider? Yes. Congress explicitly states in Section 101 of the Gun Control Act, it is not the purpose of this title to place any undue or unnecessary federal restrictions or burdens on law-abiding citizens with respect to the acquisition, possession, or use of firearms, and This title is not intended to discourage the private ownership or use of firearms by law-abiding citizens. ATF makes no analysis of how the definitions, without tailoring, might contradict Gun Control Act or discourage the private ownership of firearms. Did ATF fail to consider other important aspects of the problem? Yes, ATF failed to include any Second Amendment analysis. Further, ATF would award itself the power to determine when a component has become a firearm based on included instructions or a firm's marketing. ATF failed to include a First Amendment analysis. Further still, ATF fails to offer a Fifth Amendment analysis of its purposefully opaque sample submission process. Is this a lawyer? This has to be a lawyer, right? Is ATF's explanation counter to the evidence? Yes. Press accounts from 2021 show groups like Everytown met with the White House to lobby for an ATF reinterpretation of the word firearm. We see ATF's prior regulatory rationale on the partially complete receiver question in the city of Syracuse, New York versus ATF, bunch of numbers, and the state of California, more numbers, but the rule has no treatment of this ATF record. May we reasonably conclude that this rule is made at the direction of activist elements outside the ordinary legal and administrative center of the agency? What? That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Did ATF consider all the regulatory alternatives? No. The Wall Street Journal published a story recounting a 2021 meeting ATF leadership arranged with the wider firearms industry where ghost gun question and this rule were discussed. So rushed was this agency to publication that there is no mention of any one of the regulatory alternatives proposed by the industry. Did ATF adequately explain its massive flip-flop on 80% receivers? No. ATF hides from its public record of decades of determination letters produced by City of Syracuse, New York versus ATF and State of California versus ATF. The agency does not explain if it's judiciously is stopped from withdrawing these. I don't know what that means. ATF is so cowardly that in 100 pages, it would rather imply the overturning of these letters and ask commenters if they believe a flip-flop has even occurred. This is shameless and deserves chapters of explanation. In these more than 100 pages, we see a textbook demonstration of undisciplined, bureaucratic decision-making. The new definitions of a partially complete receiver and readily guarantee arbitrary and capricious outcomes and threaten a host of activity, commercial and non-commercial, protected by the threaten a host of activity, commercial and non-commercial, protected by the Second Amendment. This proposed rule ignores the realities of the design and engineering process, how marking of components is an active state of manufacture is actually performed by real manufacturers and producers, and it incentivizes technical developments that will create an even worse black market of untraceable firearms, contrary to the rule's stated goals. Holy moly, that was a bunch of stuff right there. That was worth reading. I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee. Let's see, is there anybody still out there? This is the internet. It's not television, it's not programming. You get to use your fingers, keyboards, and pieces of glass, I guess, to interact, right? You get to say stuff, and then I can say stuff like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Yep, things like that, right? So let's see. We'll go back to comment number 45,882. I, as a law-abiding gun owner, do not agree with ATF 2021 R-05. The ATF's proposed rule, ATF 2021 R-05, would broadly redefine firearm and frame or receiver to expand both numbers and types of items that the ATF would consider regulated firearms. This would be a disaster for the firearms industry and individual gun owners who enjoy building their own firearms. It is also an unconstitutional attempt to legislate via regulation. The proposed rule is vague and unclear, making it a nightmare to determine what would be legal or not. This risk to the livelihood of the firearm industry employers, employees, and individual builders cannot stand. We've done nothing to deserve this. We are already law-abiding. There is no need to choke our right even further. Dang. So I kind of thought this morning, well, I'm just going to read the pistol ones, because the pistol ones, there's more of them. And the pistol ones, they're filtering less of them. And the filter ones and the pistol brace ones, people are passionate about. And then I come over here, and people are passionate about these, and people are posting real ones. It's amazing. It's almost like there's nothing but things to be optimistic about. Right on, thanks. So I never know, because there's a lot of trolls out there and people that don't comment, so I appreciate it. All right, so next up is 45868. Dear Sir Miss, I am writing to you to say I do not support and legislation against pistol braces because it does not violate any NFA laws, and it is not and has been proven and documented by the ATF. Thank you. All right, so I am writing to you to say I do not support any legislation against pistol braces because it does not violate any NFA laws and it has not been proven and documented by the ATF. That's a tough one. I'm pretty sure if I put the right words in there, I can make it go either way. But let's just say that that's somebody who's pro-freedom. All right, next up is 45804. This is a massive overreach by the federal government. You have no business making rules or laws on what I can or cannot make in the privacy of my own home. The making of arms goes back to the beginning of time. I will not comply. And then there's a boilerplate where they comply by boilerplating. Next up is 45802, or no, 820, excuse me. Don't y'all have better things to do than go after law-abiding citizens? Like go after real criminals, for Christ's sakes. You are restricting the rights for everyone in this beautiful country. For what? Every gun law is an infringement of the Second Amendment. Abolish the ATF. Shall not be infringed. I mean, I like it, but they're probably seeing that like, wah, 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 shall not be infringed. Next up is 45853. Oh my, BATFE 6921, ATF 2021 R-05. To be succinct, I find the proposed redefinition ambiguous and overly broad. That's not succinct. I do not know if this is blatant ignorance, i.e. three blind men trying to describe an elephant. That's rude. Or if this is more nefarious, intentional gross malfeasance to cast a wide net as possible to regulate 80% receivers, chassis, and other firearms accessories not currently regulated. Whether it is either of the possibilities previously listed or simply the BATFE has run a sloppy ship and now finds itself in a quandary is the BATFE technology branch, and I use that term through gritted teeth, should be scolded like a petulant child and sent back to their desks until they can craft clear, concise, proposed legislation understandable to the layman and average law enforcement officer. This should be accomplished without ambiguity, and overturning all their previous approvals and making everything require ambitious re-registration and renumbering. If BATFE is unwilling or incapable in this regard, perhaps they need shorn of said responsibility. Did somebody write that? If the BATFE is unwilling or incapable in this regard, perhaps they need shorn of said responsibility. I feel like I should have some sort of felt hat on with a feather in it and like a dagger in my belt if I'm going to say stuff like that. But I'll keep going without commenting. If they were made Bureau Alcohol, Tobacco, and Medicinal Excise Tax, which they seem competent to handle, and the firearms portion handed to a responsible agency, and all the BATFE Firearms Administration above field grade excuse to lateral promotions where they can no longer hurt the American public, and the new responsible agency allowed to hire people who can write legal definitions in American English, this problem would be resolved. I mean, I'm reading it. They wrote it. In conclusion, the BTAFE's proposal makes things worse, not better, and can ensnare unsuspecting citizens in legal traps for decades down the line with this renumbering scheme and reclassification that in itself is malfeasance, and the writers of this proposed legislation should be ashamed, if not prosecuted. Oh my goodness, it had a good end. It was not succinct. This was the opposite of succinct. All right. Next is comment 45841. I am writing in support of the ATF's proposed rule that would stop the proliferation of deadly and untraceable ghost guns. Oh, it's this one again. Ghost guns are quickly becoming the weapon of choice for violent criminals, not just regular criminals, but the violent ones, as they allow anyone, little baby, my dog over there, a stick in the backyard, can make an untraceable weapon in less than an hour, like in 15 minutes, maybe 14 minutes if they were quick at it. The proposed rule would restrict criminals and extremists, who we have to start mentioning all the time for the narrative, who want to buy untraceable guns without a background check because they're nefarious, increasing public safety because it's not a shitty sentence to just throw that in, even though it has nothing to do with whatever the thing is before it, and likely saving countless lives, because we need to virtue signal at the end, just so that anybody who's so stupid as to think this is a good 2 paragraphs understands that they've been virtue signaled to. But anyway, if they're going to write garbage like that, at least our boilerplate's longer, so we win, right? Our boilerplate's like 4 paragraphs or more. So I think we win. All right, next is this boilerplate? I don't know. It's long, though. We're going to find out. So it is 45840. I'm going to drink some coffee. I fully support a person's right to construct a personal firearm. It hasn't been an issue until the past few months. The Second Amendment constitutional rights of Americans have come under siege by recently voted in socialist leftist bureaucrats who are bent on strangling the ownership rights of gun owners for their political gain. This rule isn't about public safety. It's about blatant disarmament and political leftism. Crime statistics bear out that violent criminals surprisingly aren't deterred by laws. There are many current laws pertaining to violent crime, but each day hundreds, maybe even thousands of violent acts are committed in the U.S. with no regard to those laws. Only people who will be affected by these proposed rules are the law-abiding gun-owning citizens of our country. I respectfully ask these rules are not enacted. And then, and I think that's boilerplate. I'm just going to assume it's boilerplate and not read like more paragraphs. Yeah, this is definitely, that's the same boilerplate. Okay, so this is the next one. It's comment 45786, and this is just a quick sentence, and then the same boilerplate that was in the last one that I was debating. As a military veteran, it saddens and sickens me to see the ATF attempt to erase our rights as law-abiding citizens of this great country. Shame on you, ATF. Shame on you. If you have no shame, then it doesn't affect them. They laugh at that. 45785. Thanks for taking my comment. All I have to say is that the ATF is attacking my Second Amendment rights. You are doing nothing more than hurting law-abiding citizens. This will do nothing to stop criminals because if you're willing to break the law, you're not worried about ATF's laws. Thanks for giving us less freedom. And then it's boilerplate. Yeah, it's boilerplate. And it's got a couple of unique words, so it's really easy to find boilerplate. Uh-oh, I think we're back to where we started. because I see that I've highlighted something already on this one and on this one, and yeah, so we're back to the beginning. So we've effectively read 50 subsequent or sequential, I guess, comments from the redefinition of a firearm. Guess what I'm going to do? I just closed 50 tabs. Oh no, 45 tabs. Look at that. Now I do know how to figure out how many tabs. And we discovered how to learn how many tabs are in your DuckDuckGo browser window. So I have 45 tabs open. Now I just go ahead and closed them. So we went to what did I just say? The firearms redefinition comments, and we found 45 of them that were basically unique. Some of them had boilerplate attached to a unique paragraph or two. Since they were all approved, we have to assume that the ATF is considering all of them, and the boilerplate would definitely put the ones with the boilerplate into the pile of proposition or whatever, and all those antis, literally every anti one was the same one, and there's what, 5, maybe 4, I don't know, it wasn't that many. So I think what I'll do is end this one, and this is right around 1:11:11, 1 hour, 11 minutes, and I just missed 11 seconds. So I'm going to have to go to 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds, because that's how it is. But I'll stop this one, and then I'll just start another one, and we'll talk about stabilizing braces, because there's only 1,600 comments over there, so you know they're going to be good. Here's the thing. Firearms definitions is technically way more important because it's way more big, but they're both super important and necessary, so we can't even play favorites, even though the other one's more important. So the problem is, stabilizing braces, all the youngins have stabilizing braces because they shoot 9mm all the time and they don't have muscles and they can't shoot real calibers, decent calibers. So they have to use braces. It's their own fault for being weak, right? So the problem is now all they can do is comment because they got nothing else to do. They don't have jobs and they can't shoot decent calibers. So they're commenting all over the braces, all over them. Look at, there's 59,000 on the braces. It's shameful because there's fewer on the other one. What happened to it? Let me open that other one up again. How am I going to get it? I'm going to go over here to history. Am I going to get it from here? I guess maybe not. Oh, I can get it from my own video. Oh, I just stole my own page. Listening to myself yawn is pretty lame. I don't know why anybody would want to listen. All right, so here we go. Boom. And what are we talking? Got to go back over to what happened here. What happened to the comments here? All right, I guess I won't be concerned. They're still there. All right, so what I'm looking at is 59,000 comments for the stabilizing braces because of the kids. 56,000 comments for the receivers because it's old news and only the FUDs care about receivers. Nobody cares about your AR-15s, old man. Those are from the old days. Now all you want is your PCCs, your metric PCCs. So we're going to go read some of the, oh, what happened? That's probably what happened. I went too narrow, and then it throws the formatting of the columns off. And that's why people don't use columns on websites, but still use them. So anyhow, the braces are getting way more comments. However, way fewer are getting in. They're going to be fun to read. These people are so passionate about their braces. It's heartwarming, and you end up going from extremes of elation to pride to frustration to amazement with the stabilizing brace comments. I don't want to play it up too much, but it's the best thing you're ever going to do is read the comments from the braces. For some reason, people that can't shoot a decent caliber and need to brace their firearms can just speak eloquently when they're talking to their ATF. Where the receiver people, they're honest, but, we don't use the same words. We don't use all the fancy commas and parentheses and whatnot. So at this point, I'm done. I'm going to open it up here in a second. I'll just take a minute to maybe pour some more coffee, and then we'll go maybe another hour on the stabilizing braces. If you want, as soon as you see it start up, let me know if you want comments or not, and I'll let the people watching live decide if we'll do additional commentary or not on the next session here. All right. Well, I thought it said, wouldn't it be lit to churn responsibility? Because that would be lit, fam. Let's see. Here is my comment, which I'm not allowed to add. Personally, I'm concerned with the pervasive access to firearms for criminals who will, of course, use them for nefarious purposes. However, I do not. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Okay, so we're going to end this one. We'll be back in just a moment with more, because can't get enough ATF comments.